You know, we always talk about the US economy like it's this one single giant thing. But what if I told you that just a handful of states are actually doing most of the heavy lifting? Today, we're going to peel back the layers and see who the real powerhouses are, and maybe more importantly, what happens when they start to get a little shaky. Let's dive in.
So, just to get our heads around the scale here, the U.S. economy is a $30 trillion giant. That number comes from GDP, which is really just a fancy way of measuring the value of everything a country makes and does in a year. And 30 trillion? Wow. That's more than the economies of China, Japan, Germany, and the UK all put together. It's an absolutely staggering number, but where is all that money, all that activity actually coming from?
So you have to wonder, right? Is that enormous economic pie shared equally? Spoiler alert, not even close. The reality is, a few key players completely dominate the field, and the gap between the top and the bottom is way, way wider than you probably think.
Okay, so get this. Just 4 states are responsible for over a third of the entire US economy. I mean, think about that. 4 out of 50. These are the heavyweights, the absolute titans of American business and industry.
I mean, this chart kind of says it all, doesn't it? The economic power of California, Texas, New York, and Florida is so huge that what they produce together is almost as much as what 2/3 of the rest of the country produces. This kind of concentration is just incredible, and it has massive implications for, well, for everyone.
So let's zoom in on that big slice. California, no surprise, is leading the pack with a massive 14.5%. That's your tech and entertainment powerhouse. Then you've got Texas, a giant in oil and gas, but also increasingly a big player in tech too. New York's finance and real estate machine keeps it right near the top. And then you have Florida, with its booming tourism and trade routing out the group. I mean, these 4 are just in a league of their own.
And here's a fact that just blows my mind. To put it all in perspective, if California were its own country, it would have the 5th largest economy on the entire planet. Yeah, bigger than India, bigger than the United Kingdom. That's the kind of economic force we're dealing with in just a single state.
All right, so we've met the giants, but what about, well, everybody else? Let's shift gears and look at the other 47 states, because once you get past that top tier, the economic landscape changes really, really fast.
And just take a look at this range. It's not some gentle slope, it's a cliff. After you pass the top few states, you very quickly get to the middle of the pack. A state like Oregon, for instance, sitting at number 25, contributes just over 1%. The difference between the top and the bottom is truly staggering.
Let me put it another way. California's economy is so enormous that it could basically swallow Vermont's economy whole, more than 70 times over. That really just drives home the kind of massive economic differences that exist inside of one country. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, it means that for most states, the typical American state, their piece of the economic pie is pretty small. The giants are really the exception, not the rule. But does that make those smaller states any less important to the health of the whole economy? So we've seen the power rankings, right? But here's where the story takes a turn. Because bigger doesn't always mean safer. In fact, as we're starting to see, some of the absolute wealthiest, most powerful states are actually facing some of the biggest risks. And hey, don't just take my word for it. Moody's Analytics, these folks are the experts, they're starting to sound the alarm. They're looking at things like jobs, housing permits, retail sales, and they are seeing some really troubling signs of a slowdown happening at the state level. It kind of suggests the whole foundation might not be as strong as it looks from the outside.
And this is the bombshell. It's not just a slowdown. Nearly half the country, 23 states, is already, right now, in a recession. This is a huge crisis that's flying completely under the radar of those big national numbers, and it has the potential to drag everyone else down with it.
And what's really stunning is that the giants, they aren't immune. California and New York, the cornerstones of the whole U.S. economy, are on that at-risk list. They're teetering on the edge. If those 2 states, which make up more than a 1/5 of the entire economy, actually slip into recession, the ripple effects could be, well, catastrophic for the rest of the country.
So, what we have here is this great paradox of the American economy. On the one hand, you've got this incredible concentration of wealth and power. But on the other, you've got these deep vulnerabilities that are spreading all across the map. So which is it? Are we on the edge of a major crisis, or is this just a temporary blip?
And see, those big national GDP numbers, they're like the tip of the iceberg. They can look really impressive, right? Showing strong growth, but they completely hide the massive problems that are lurking just below the surface. The truth is, while the headline number might look good, a huge part of the country is already in crisis mode. So, in the end, the fate of the entire U.S. economy really does seem to rest on the shoulders of just a few of these giants. But as we've just seen, those shoulders are starting to shake. Is our system strong enough to handle that kind of shock, or are we headed for a really painful reckoning? It's a question that, one way or another, is going to affect every single one of us.